How to make changes to lease agreement. As a reminder to lease changes, you should never make changes to the first lease flow after the lease start date and initial balance sheet postings, as this will affect the initial starting balance of the lease. When a change occurs during your lease term, you can alter the agreement via the Lease Changes tab in the lease agreement. You have option to make the change using Increase in Scope or Term, Decrease in Term, Decrease in Scope, or Terminate Lease option. With this selection, you can make changes to all remaining lease flows. You can also change a single payment flow of a lease. This will be explained at the end of this video. Increase in Scope, Term, allows you to lengthen the lease term or increase the scope, whereas Decrease in Term gives the option to shorten the lease term. Moreover, Decrease the Scope allows you to reduce the scope of the underlying lease agreement, and Terminate the Lease option brings the lease contract to an end. When selecting Increase in Scope, Term, the following information should be inserted. Date of change, which is the date of the new agreement. New values will be calculated using this date as a start. System requires the data to be the first day of the month and therefore next day of the previous flow. Effective start date is the date when the actual payments is changed. Use here the first day of the month. New end date should be changed if there is a change to the lease agreement end date. System requires the date to be the last day of the month. Interest rate can be changed if needed. Enter new fixed asset lease amount if there has been a change. Enter new services included amount if needed. And finally, total lease payment is automatically calculated from the fixed asset lease amount and services included. These three fields will have an effect on your lease liability and right-of-use asset. Exercise price of a purchase option, residual value guarantee, and penalties for terminating the lease. If you enter any values here, you need to be certain that you will execute these at the end of your lease term. The liability amount will show these values at the end of the lease term, which you then need to write off on your balance sheet with the payments. Once you have inserted all the information for the change, click Save, and the system will adjust your balance sheet values accordingly. Decrease in Term works with the similar principles as just explained, even though it's only used for the purpose of reducing the lease term. Decrease in Scope in turn is for cases where there is the lease scope reduced. For example, if you are renting a 100 square meter office space and you continue using only 75% of the space, you can make a 25% decrease to your lease terms. With an input of 25%, the system automatically updates reduced flow values for the remaining term on your lease flow table. Terminate. Lease is the change option to use when you want to put an end to a lease agreement immediately. Alternatively, if you only want to change a single flow of your lease, you can go to the Lease Flows view and select Edit at the end of the lease flow row. The only exception is that you cannot make changes to a single flow that has already been created through the Lease Changes function. In order to track the changes made to your lease agreement, you can go to Audit Trail Sheet and keep track what type of changes have been made, when they were made, and by whom. Every change is saved as a separate lease change item.